Hey everybody, Commander Symons here. Just want to go over industrialization since that's what we've been talking about this week. Hey, some key phrases that you guys really need to remember is laissez-faire. Okay, laissez-faire. Remember, we talked about in class how that is hands-off, and what we mean by hands-off is the government is to stay out of business. In other words, business owners or robber barons or captains of industry, as we called them later in class, they don't want government to get involved because businesses are in business to make as much money as they possibly can. And when government gets involved, they create regulations, and that usually costs businesses money. For example, minimum wage, right? Business owners would like to pay us a lot less. Benefits like sick time. And if we get hurt on the job, businesses don't want to have to pay for those things. Sometimes they don't want to even pay to ensure that their product is safe. And that's going to be a long fight during the industrial age. The industrial age is also called, every once in a while, the Gilded Age. I believe it was Mark Twain who came up with that phrase. But sometimes the Regents likes to use that. So the Gilded Age, also the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Yet another vocab word that we went over this week was social Darwinism. All right, again, sorry. Social Darwinism means survival of the fittest. Now, in the business industry, this was mostly used by robber barons or captains of industry or tycoons, whatever you want to call them. But these wealthy business owners, with their business practices, preferred this word. They forced other businesses, smaller businesses, from the market because they didn't want competitors. They wanted all the money for themselves. So it was very simple. If you couldn't compete with that business, Carnegie Steel, Standard Oil, perhaps even Henry Ford, well, then your business shouldn't survive. Social Darwinism. The types of businesses robber barons set up today are almost completely illegal, but we'll go over that when you guys take economics with me next year. The types of businesses, or business structures I should say, were called monopolies or pools or trusts. Now for the Regents, unfortunately, they don't really differentiate between those three businesses. But remember, monopoly is perhaps a business controlling every aspect of that product. For example, Carnegie owned mines and railroads. It was called vertical integration, and he used that to lower his price of steel and force people out of the business. And then Standard Oil is going to do the exact same thing. Vanderbilt, a little bit with the railroads, although he was mostly a railroad tycoon. But these monopolies, remember, they tried to eliminate competition because when two businesses compete, well, perhaps one business loses, and these robber barons do not want to lose, and what I mean is by losing money sometimes. So the three vocab words, monopolies, pools, and trust, relatively for the Regents, they mean the same thing. All right, so let's quickly review the robber barons that we talked about this week. Henry Ford. Remember, Henry Ford really uses the assembly line to mass produce cars, and we talked about this mass production. He realizes the faster that he can produce cars, the lower the cost of production of cars. And he really wants everybody to have a car. He wants to sell everybody a car. He wants to make money. So let's remember, when you guys start buying your own car, buy Ford, an American car, an American tradition. Another one of the robber barons that we spoke about this week was Vanderbilt. Remember, he was a railroad tycoon. Again, he was buying railroads in order to construct larger ones to lower his costs. I think in the reading said it was the railroad industry was fragmented, and he starts to put it together. But again, trying to form a pool, a monopoly. Then there's Carnegie. You definitely want to know Andrew Carnegie and Carnegie Steel. Remember, he really, in this country, starts the mass production of steel through the Bessemer process. Remember, he went over to England and saw it and was like, OMG, I got to do this. And he brings it back over to this country, and we see some of the largest steel production in the world. And of course, what are we going to use steel for? To build cities, to build bridges, things like that. But now, because of steel, cities can start going up instead of just outward. You also want to know John Rockefeller, right? Standard Oil. The company today is called U.S. Steel. But he wants to control the oil industry in the entire world. If that doesn't say tycoon or Donald Trump, I don't know what does. I don't know if he ever came close, but we do know that he was probably one of the richest men that ever walked the face of the planet. And again, he does it through vertical integration, a lot like what Carnegie did, controlling railroads, controlling other aspects of the industry. Let's also talk about how the middle class and the poor were affected by industrialization. The middle class are going to actually increase their standard of living. Now, that's a phrase we haven't really talked about yet, but this standard of living, what I mean by increases is life is going to become more comfortable. They're going to be able to buy, well, more than just the one dress that the woman would have. Because we're mass producing products such as cars, people are going to have the money to be able to purchase some of these products because the costs are coming down because of mass production. So the middle class will see an increase of standard of living. But there's also the poor. The poor are, well, God, we always have poor in this country, unfortunately. And they are going to take the brunt of this industrialization. They're going to work the longest hours. They're going to work in the most unsafe jobs for very little pay and little benefits. They're going to start to live in the slums in the cities called tenement houses. And the cities, you guys, you have to remember, the cities are nothing like what we see today. There was no sewage system. Lots of places didn't have indoor plumbing, for God's sakes. There was no garbage pickup. So what would people do with all that stuff? Yeah, use your imagination. It's in the streets. People are walking through it. Kids are playing in it. It was just ripe with disease. Okay, guys, almost done. Some legislation gets passed during this time because there's a movement. Eventually, you guys will know it as the progressives or the populist movement. And this movement is about making people's lives better. If you listen to Bernie Sanders, you know, that's something that he is constantly talking about. But I digress. I apologize. So one of the pieces of legislation that gets passed to start breaking up monopolies is the Sherman Antitrust Act. So anti is against trusts. So it's against trusts. It's against big businesses. It's going to start to break them up. Of course, the Sherman Antitrust Act doesn't have a lot of teeth, and later the Clayton Antitrust Act is going to come along. And so at this point, our governments really start to getting involved in the economy. We're going to break up these monopolies because without competition, they can charge exorbitant prices, not any price, but high prices if they want to. Their products don't have to be good without competition because there's no place else to go. So we as Americans feel that competition is a good thing to have. So you got the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act. You also have the Interstate Commerce Act and the Interstate Commerce Commission, and that's regulating trade amongst states. So this also gives the federal government an opportunity to regulate big businesses. One of the other vocab. All right, stop. So let's talk about the middle class and how they're going to be infected. My God, is this the Zika virus? So the other thing that we got to talk about, ham, dear God. All right, hold on. Ham. Oh, I got my sweatshirt dirty.